As I've mentioned, the weather data we are receiving is in a format called JSON. It's one of my favorite data formats. It is very versatile and can be found and used in many applications. Let's take a look at the weather data to help explain what JSON is and how it's used. Let's head back to the dark sky URL we looked at previously and examine our data. JSON is spelled JSON and is in all caps. It stands for JavaScript Object Notation. The idea behind JSON is that data can be represented in this simple-to-read manner that is easily parsed and used by programming languages. Data from websites can be returned in a variety of different formats. JSON is a popular choice to use for mobile applications because it's easy and efficient. An important consideration when dealing with mobile apps is the size of the data package being transferred. JSON is minimal compared to a format such as XML. This is a big benefit for users on slow network connections or where users get charged for data. Additionally, and a big reason I like JSON so much, is that JSON data is represented as objects in a similar way that many programming languages, like Java, handle data. However, JSON is just all data. There are no methods in the objects, just properties. JSON is built on and can be represented by two types of structures. The first is a collection of key value pairs that can be grouped together as an object. The second is an ordered list of objects. We can think of this as an array or list. These two data structures are universal and have support in virtually all modern programming languages. As such, it makes a lot of sense to use JSON as a data format with its interchangeability with different languages. If the JSON data is an object or dictionary, it begins with a left curly brace and ends with a right curly brace. Each key in the key value pair is followed by a colon, and key value pairs are separated by commas. On the other hand, if the object is an ordered collection of values, or an array, it begins with a left bracket and ends with a right bracket, with each value being separated by commas. Let's see how our data from our weather query is structured. Taking another look at our weather data with this in mind, we see that we have one object at the root level, designated by this curly brace. We can contract it and expand it there. So we see that our first items in our object are a few properties, with the key on the left and the value on the right. With our JSON extension installed, this version is pretty readable. If we switch over here to the raw format, we see that the key for every property is surrounded in double quotes. The colon separates the key from the value, and if the value is a string, it is enclosed in double quotes. If the value is numerical, it's just in plain text. Switching back over to the easier to read, pretty printed version, let's take a look at the key name currently. What sort of data is its value? This is where JSON is great. See the curly braces here? As I mentioned, curly braces denote a JSON object, so the value of the currently key is another JSON object. This is a great example of how JSON objects can be nested within each other. There's another aspect of the overall JSON object I'd like to touch on, although we won't be using it in our Stormy app. Take a look at the minutely object and the data property. Those square brackets denote it's an array. This data element is an array of data points providing minute-by-minute weather detail. Each item in the array is a JSON object, and each object is separated by commas. One thing to note here, in this particular example, each object inside the array is the same. This makes sense for this data since each minute the weather data would be reporting the same information. JSON arrays, however, can hold different types of objects. That's a brief introduction to JSON data and how it's structured. You'll come across JSON data much more in your development career, so having a foundational knowledge of it is important. Fortunately, the Android SDK offers some very helpful classes for working with JSON. We'll use them in a moment to populate our current weather model object.